grew up in Fairfield, Maine, which was very close, relatively speaking, to LaFleur Airport, where a lot of the Air Force sent daily flights to different unknown areas, which meant we were considered to be within the nuclear circle, the area of damage if a nuclear bomb was sent to the East Coast. So the house my parents bought in 1960, that same year my father added a bomb shelter. So to be perfectly honest, the idea of the bomb shelter didn't bother me until I went to grade school, when we had the atomic drills, where we watch a film strip on the possibilities of an atomic bomb landing in our vicinity, and we'd see videos of kids doing duck and cover under their desks, which I wondered how that would help, but I was a little kid. And then we'd be sent home with pamphlets telling us how to make bomb shelters in your basement from mattresses. And my mother kind of said, we have a bomb shelter. And that was when I started to realize what that really creepy room that had a zigzag entrance before you actually went into the room was for. It bothered me in that, it did. You always knew which schools had the bomb shelters. And pretty much every school where I grew up had some form of a bomb shelter. This school is interesting in that we don't have one here. But the school I went to didn't have one. We were to go to the high school because they had the bomb shelter. Our school district was, the schools were all within walking distance, even though it was a busing district. I was a walking student. So I knew that within walking distance of my house, there were other bomb shelters. In fact, the closest one was what was at the time the junior high school. And that was 3 blocks from my house. So honestly, if there had been a bomb, it probably would have been a lot more comfortable to go to the bomb shelter at the junior high school than the one my father had built. But that was never on my radar in terms of where I would go. It was just, home. But all the schools in the area I grew up in and the high school I went to all had prominently those signs saying, this building has a bomb shelter. So it wasn't, I don't want to say you got numb to it, because there was never a before. It was always, oh, this building has a bomb shelter, okay. The weird stuff was, when you had the film strips telling you what to do in case of a bomb. And that was weird. Between the race to get to the moon between Russia and the US, the Russia aspect really didn't make an imprint on me as a 6-year-old. It was only till later that it was like, yeah, we beat the Russians, we got to the moon first. But the Cold War that occurred in the 60s and 70s, that was definitely on my radar, because you have what's going on there. So the Soviet Union ending in 1990, we crowded around the television for that. We watched all that. The kids tearing down the wall with little hammers and things, taking chunks of the wall home with them. That was a big deal. That was huge. Because I do remember growing up as a small child, seeing the front page of the newspaper and seeing pictures of people trying to escape East Berlin and trying to get past the wall and being shot by guards. Every once in a while they bring that back up on the news, usually in relationship to some negotiations going on between the Russians and the Americans, and communism and capitalism and all that, but really didn't understand why they would show that and then not show it. So, and I couldn't tell you now. I was just a kid. Cold War now. Growing up seeing the Cold War, that was weird. Seeing people dying to get out of somewhere. That I didn't understand, because they weren't supposed to be in prison. This was a town. This is where they lived. Why can't you just leave? And getting shot for leaving your town. That'd be like getting shot for going to Verona. That doesn't make sense. And then seeing the wall coming down was enormous. That suddenly you could just, something that you could get shot for now was just crossing the street. Prior to the wall going down, there was some initial attempt to make propaganda by the East Germans. They sent exchange students to come to different high schools and talk to high schools and explain how they weren't the enemy. And that seriously is how it came off. And I felt really bad for the young man that they sent to our high school, because he was expecting a certain level of naivete from my classmates that didn't exist. I went to a very interesting high school where we had a lot of very politically active students. I can't say I was one of them, but we had a lot of very politically active students, and they asked this guy some really hard questions about, if your place is so great, why do you shoot people who want to live? If what you say about the economics and what and how communism is such a success.
How much longer?
Why do all these people want to leave? And why aren't you allowing them to leave? Because maybe they would leave and want to come back if they discovered that it was better. Why aren't you allowing them that opportunity? And they hammered that poor kid. He was early 20s, and he's getting hammered by 15 and 16-year-olds who are really up to date on what is communism, what is capitalism. And not that capitalism is the best choice, but if you don't like it, at least we're not going to shoot you. And every news broadcast during that time had something about the Vietnam War. Either interviews with the higher-ups telling you how well it was going, shots of men being flown home because their bodies being flown home. It wasn't until later they started showing shots of the actual conflict and people being shot at. As it got closer to the end of the war, the video of the war got more and more intense. I can't say gruesome because it was in black and white. We had a black and white television, but it was intense. And that was difficult to watch the Vietnam War. Lost a war. We lost. That was a big deal. Oh God, I can't. I still get upset about how that was handled. That we essentially left them there when there were people, past tense, sorry, there were people who had knowledge that this was that they were in trouble, but they didn't want to act on it. They didn't. I don't know if it was a pride thing or a refusal to admit mistakes, because I wasn't privy to that, but that should never have happened. Those people should have been removed. There should not have been so many people there. Benghazi is another example of how the intelligence agency just completely dropped the ball. That Benghazi, because they knew there were issues, it was a much smaller group of people that were involved in Benghazi, because they knew there were problems, but they should never have been there when that happened. In Iran, I don't know if they thought that it's an embassy they can't take it over, but what's to stop them? I mean, the word embassy, that's, you're in anarchy. In anarchy, you don't obey rules. Oh yeah, and they did that on purpose. They did not want, Carter very much wanted to bring them home, and it was a political slap in the face to him that they waited until after the election to let them loose. That was the only reason. There was that extra few days. That was one last slap in the face to him. Carter got an agreement between a Jewish country and a predominantly Muslim country. That had never happened before. Getting Anwar Sadat to sit down with, was it Menachem Begin? Do I have that name right? I'm old. I don't. Forgive me. I've forgotten the names. But to have a predominantly Muslim country, even though they're secular, to sit down and discuss peace and all with Israel was unprecedented. Just absolutely amazing.